Howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're taking a trip back in time to explore what a full day of eating looked like for the working class 250 years ago. It's not just about the food. It's about the connection to our past and the stories that come with it. When I say the words breakfast, lunch, and dinner, what pops into your mind? You're probably thinking of eggs and bacon for breakfast, a quick sandwich for lunch, and a big meal with the family for dinner. For us today, our eating schedule is often dictated by a 9-to-5 job. But for a working man or woman in the 18th century, it was a completely different story. Their meals were a careful balance of practicality and necessity, fueling them for a full day of hard work from dawn to dusk. A hasty start. Let's start the day with breakfast. What do you think of? For most of us, it's a donut and coffee, eggs, or pancakes. But if we were to travel back to the 18th century, we would find a breakfast that looks nothing like our modern morning meals. The focus was on a simple, hearty meal that was quick to prepare. This is something that resonates with many of you today. As one viewer shared, "It's good to know that as a working woman, my daily breakfast of oatmeal is exactly what they were eating in the 18th century. I love that it is for the same reasons. It's cheap, it's fast, and in the winter, it is nice and warm." Another viewer echoed this, saying, "I literally eat bread and cheese for breakfast most days. Big cup of tea, chunk of bread, and some cheese." This idea of a simple, no-fuss breakfast for busy days is timeless. The core of the 18th century working man's breakfast was oatmeal, or what they called hasty pudding, because it could be made in just a few minutes. It also appeared as milk porridge, or pottage. Historical texts from hospitals and workhouses listed a breakfast of oatmeal thickened with broth or milk and some bread. Even a farmer's breakfast was basic, often a beef broth or milk porridge. A viewer shared a wonderful memory from their grandmother's farm, where the breakfast for the family and farm hands was oatmeal with water and homemade buttermilk. Another viewer remembered their grandfather's breakfast of oatmeal with country ham and red-eye gravy, a simple but filling meal that would carry him until lunch. Even the wealthy often ate simple meals for breakfast. Benjamin Franklin mentioned the classic breakfast of bread, cheese, and beer in his autobiography, and the Duke of Bridgewater had a breakfast of a mess of water gruel. This shows that for many, simple meals were a conscious choice, not just a matter of budget. The midday dinner. After a few hours of hard work, it was time for the day's most important meal. For a working man or woman in the 18th century, lunch was what they called dinner, and it was the main event. It was a substantial, heavy meal to fuel them for the rest of the day. This tradition is still alive in some places. A viewer shared that in parts of the UK, dinner is still the midday meal, with a lighter meal in the evening called tea or supper. A person from Germany shared that lunch is a big, warm meal where everyone comes to the table, and dinner is a colder meal of bread and sausage. Another viewer recalled growing up on a farm in Iowa where the midday meal was also called dinner and was a huge meal of heavy protein and starch. These stories highlight how these traditions have been passed down through generations. The meal itself was often a communal effort, with women cooking for the men working in the fields or on the railroad. The meals were often brought out to the field so the workers didn't have to take a long break. William Ellis, in his 1750 book Country Housewife's Family Companion, wrote that if the men didn't get their food on time, they would lag in their work and lose time in expecting it. This is how important this midday meal was. He lists some examples, like broad beans and bacon one day, and beef with carrots or turnips or cabbage or cucumbers or potatoes another day. These were substantial single-dish meals. A viewer perfectly illustrated this, describing how a yard dog in a rendering facility had a big container of an unreasonable amount of meat or eggs with potatoes, beans, biscuits, or macaroni for lunch. So let's get to cooking the working man's lunch, a pot roast with beef, carrots, and potatoes, inspired by these historical references and your family stories. Here's our pot roast recipe. Prepare the beef. We're going to take a large, inexpensive cut of beef, rub it generously with salt and pepper, As a fun historical touch, one viewer mentioned their family used bacon fat to flavor food, and nutmeg was a common spice back then, so you could add a little of that if you'd like. Sear the meat. Heat some oil in your Dutch oven and sear the beef on all sides until it's a beautiful brown. This creates a flavorful crust that makes all the difference. Add the vegetables. Once the beef is seared, add your sliced carrots and potatoes. A viewer talked about how their family makes a similar meal with turnips, calling it a one-pot wonder that keeps body and soul connected. I couldn't agree more. The liquid and cooking. Add enough water to almost cover the meat. Put the lid on and place it in a modern oven at 350 degrees for an hour or two. For those of you who really want to get into the historical spirit, you could cook it with hot coals both above and below the Dutch oven. The working man's supper. When you hear the word supper, you might think of a big, hearty meal. But for the working man in the 18th century, supper was the opposite of a modern meal. It was a simple, light meal designed to be easily digested, ensuring a good night's sleep for a hard day's work to come. The reason for a light supper was simple. A heavy meal was believed to be hard to digest and would prevent you from getting the rest you needed. Historical texts even warned that the flesh of pigeons is hard to digest and therefore not judged proper supper meat. A viewer perfectly explained this, noting that this belief about melancholy juice highlights how their understanding of health directly influenced their diet. A viewer from Germany explained their modern routine, which echoes this old-world idea. I may eat 2 slices of bread for breakfast with some tea. Lunch should be the main meal for me in an ideal world, and supper is usually just bread again, or some other light meal. This is so similar to the 18th century working man's meal plan. What did a light supper look like? Things like peas pudding, bread and cheese, or simple oatmeal were common. Benjamin Franklin even described a very light supper indeed of half an anchovy on a small strip of bread and butter with half a pint of ale. This shows that the light supper was a conscious choice for many. One of my favorite comments was from a viewer who shared a memory from their aunt's farm in the 1950s. The day was fueled by a huge morning meal and another big meal in the late afternoon. The end-of-the-day meal was generally a slab of pie or cobbler topped with cheese, and it didn't take too long before everyone was upstairs in bed or asleep in their chairs. This is a fantastic example of a sweet and savory and ultimately comforting end to the day. The working man's seafood feast. Now, let's talk about a food that was a staple for everyone, from the richest tables to the poorest homes, seafood. In the early American colonies, the eastern seaboard was lined with cities, and the Atlantic Ocean was our superhighway. Fish was a huge part of the economy and diet for everyone. It's a far cry from how we often see seafood today as an extravagant food. As one viewer commented, the fancy food of today was the working man's food of yesteryear. The working man's life was all about feast or famine. When there was a bounty of fish, they had to think about how to make it last for the whole year. This meant preserving it in many ways, like drying and salting. Salting cod was a very common way to preserve it for months. Potted salmon was another method, where the fish was submerged in clarified butter to seal it off. A coastal twist. A special ingredient that was a staple for many coastal workers is oyster. We're going on a culinary journey back in time to explore a food that was a staple for everyone, from the richest tables to the poorest homes. One viewer shared he grew up in Indiana and Kentucky, far from the ocean, so getting these oysters today was super exciting. This journey has reminded me of a comment from a Noter viewer who said they grew up in Indiana and Kentucky too, and can relate to being a Midwesterner who gets really excited about seafood. It's a special treat. In the 18th century, oysters were so plentiful that they were eaten by everyone. You'd see them in the wealthiest homes and the poorest settings. In some cases, oysters were even considered a survival food. The Chesapeake Bay, for instance, had so many oysters that they were described as being thick as stones, and ships had to be careful of them because they would form walls or like tunnel shapes within the water. Before Europeans even arrived, Native Americans were already eating oysters. There are accounts of them eating so many that when Europeans showed up, They found mounds of shells, or many little mountains of oyster shells that had piled up over the years. As one viewer commented, archaeological digs have found large piles of oyster shells outside of where taverns and coffee houses once were, much like chicken wing bones outside of an Applebee's today. This shows how oysters were a cheap and hearty food, perfect for the working man. A viewer mentioned that when their grandfather came to Jefferson County, he'd walk to the beach and eat them raw. To create a working man's oyster dish, we'll take a cue from the comments and a viewer's suggestion for a hearty one-pot meal. We'll shuck our oysters into a pot, and instead of frying them, we'll boil them in their own liquor with some beer, a little salt, and maybe some bacon bits for flavor. This hearty one-pot meal would have been easy to make and very filling after a long day of work. Boiled lobster tail. People ate lobster all the time back then. A viewer noted, lobster was so plentiful and as a bottom feeder considered a trash food that in Massachusetts, indentured servants got a judgment saying they couldn't be fed lobster more than 3 times a week because it was cruel and unusual punishment. We're going to keep this recipe simple and cheap, just like a working-class family would. Just boil the lobster tail and maybe a little lemon juice to finish. Pan-fried shrimp. A text from an 18th century researcher stated that shrimp are of a sweet and tender flesh, more delicate and wholesome than lobsters or oysters. This is so interesting because today, oysters and lobsters are often at the top of the menu, while shrimp can be seen as pretty lowly. For our shrimp, we'll melt some butter in a pan, toss in the deveined and deshelled shrimp, and cook them until they turn pink on each side. Breaded fried cod. Cod was very important to our early colonies. As one viewer shared, their ancestors who were merchants and fishermen in New England considered cod to be a very big deal. We'll take a cod fillet, dry it off, and dredge it in flour seasoned with salt and pepper. Then, we'll fry it in butter until it's a golden brown on each side and the inside is nice and flaky. As we reflect on these historical mealtime traditions, I'm humbled by the stories you've shared, of big noon dinners on the farm, of grandmothers cooking for a crew of hard-working men, and of simple, nourishing meals that brought families together. These memories remind us that while our modern lives have changed dramatically, the core human needs for community, for nourishment, and for a good story remain timeless. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're not talking about fancy restaurants or celebrity chefs. We're talking about the food that truly built America. The food that got families through the lean times, born out of necessity, creativity, and a whole lot of heart. These are the poor man's dishes, the recipes passed down through generations that tell a story of resilience and hope. Grab a coffee and let's get cooking. Mac and cheese. First up, a true American icon, macaroni and cheese.
Macaroni and cheese. We gotta make this.
Its story is a perfect example of what we can do when we have to be creative. During the Great Depression, a salesman in St. Louis had a brilliant idea. He tied a packet of Kraft cheese to his boxes of macaroni with a rubber band. Kraft loved the concept, and in 1937, they launched Kraft Dinner. It was a game changer. For just 19 cents, you could feed a family of 4. It wasn't just cheap, it was a lifesaver. You know, a lot of you have shared some wonderful stories about this dish. One viewer even mentioned they moved to Italy and sometimes miss it so much they have to make their own. It just goes to show you, this dish crosses all cultural boundaries. Another viewer shared a beautiful memory of their mom's recipe, baking it in a casserole dish with a breadcrumb topping. It's so interesting to see how these simple traditions get passed down and changed a little bit over the years. The story doesn't end there. During World War II, with meat and dairy being rationed, the Kraft mac and cheese box became a vital source of protein for families. It was also a perfect quick meal for all the women who were out working in factories and didn't have time to cook complicated dinners. The original box was yellow, but by 1954, it got the iconic blue packaging we know today, giving us the famous Little Blue Box. Tuna noodle casserole. Now, let's fast forward to the 1950s. America was booming, and with the rise of supermarkets, a new kind of poor man's dish emerged. Say hello to tuna noodle casserole. This dish is a perfect snapshot of that era. After the war, food companies shifted their focus to the modern housewife, who is often a working mom needing fast and economical meals. This casserole was the answer. You know, a lot of you shared some wonderful memories about this dish. One viewer recalled their Catholic family eating it on Fridays because it was forbidden to eat meat. Another viewer mentioned it's a dish their grandmother taught them to make. And for many of you, it just brings back so much joy and memories of growing up. You guys told me about how your moms or grandmas used to put crushed Fritos or potato chips on top for that perfect crunch. It's so cool how this simple casserole can hold so many great memories. We're talking about pantry staples, canned tuna, canned cream of mushroom soup, and frozen peas. These ingredients were cheap, non-perishable, and with a new appliance like the oven, you could just pop it in and bake. It was a simple one-pan meal that saved time and money. It just tastes like a Tuesday night in the suburbs, doesn't it? Fried bologna sandwich. This next one might take you right back to your childhood. The fried bologna sandwich. Bologna was one of the most affordable deli meats you could buy. Frying it transforms it from a simple cold cut into something warm and savory. It puffs up, gets a little crispy on the edges, and creates a perfectly nostalgic, comforting meal. You know, so many of you have some great memories about this. One viewer shared that their mother, who is from French Acadia, made them toasted fried bologna sandwiches. Another viewer mentioned their mom came from Kansas during the Great Depression and would make these for her. For others, it reminds them of being a kid and watching their older brother fry the bologna until it domed up. It's so cool how this simple sandwich holds so many different stories for all of us. You could fry it up on a cast iron skillet with some onions, or even add a fried egg for a hearty breakfast sandwich. What really makes it special is how personal it is. You can add mustard, mayonnaise, or even a handful of potato chips for that satisfying crunch. It's a simple pleasure that proves sometimes the best things in life are the simplest. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Let's talk about a military classic, creamed chipped beef on toast. This dish was a staple for soldiers, especially during World War I and II. The dried salty beef could be stored indefinitely, and when rehydrated in a simple cream sauce and served over toast, it became a surprisingly hearty and satisfying meal. You know, there are so many great stories about this dish. Viewers have mentioned their fathers or grandfathers calling it shit on a shingle from their time in the Navy. It's a real part of military history. Many people shared how soaking the dried beef to control the saltiness was a total game changer. It's a testament to how these simple dishes, passed down through generations, can become family favorites. The key to this dish is the chipped beef itself. Because it was preserved with a lot of salt, you had to be careful to rinse it well to control the flavor. The sauce is a simple cream gravy, a classic roux made from flour and butter with milk. It was a no-frills, no-waste solution to feeding a lot of people for very little money. A testament to how tough people in tough times can lead to some surprisingly good food. Hot water cornbread. Now, let's head down to the American South for a true poor man's bread. Hot water cornbread. This isn't your sweet fluffy cornbread. This is a dish with deep roots, particularly in the post-Civil War era. Made with just cornmeal, boiling water, and a pinch of salt, it required no eggs, no milk, no sugar, ingredients that were often a luxury. You know, this dish holds so many cherished memories for people. One viewer shared that their grandmother used to make it for them every time they visited. Another mentioned their mom, who came from Puerto Rico, makes a similar dish, and they love to eat it with a cup of coffee in the morning. And many of you mentioned how it's a staple for pairing with collard greens or just serving with beans. It's amazing how a simple dish like this can connect us to our family history and our culture. The key is the boiling water. It softens the cornmeal, and if you get the ratio just right, you get this beautiful moldable dough, and you fry it in bacon grease or lard in a cast iron skillet. The result? A crispy golden crust on the outside and a soft, flavorful inside. It's a simple, rustic, and incredibly flavorful piece of history that's perfect for sopping up any kind of gravy or stew. Goulash. Goulash, though it has European roots, became an American poor man's staple by using what was on hand. The original Hungarian goulash is a rich, hearty soup with tender beef and a bold paprika flavor. But the American version? It's a completely different dish, and it was a genius way to feed a family on a budget. You know, this dish brings up a lot of memories for people. One viewer shared how their mother, who was from a mostly Scots-Irish family, made goulash with beef, paprika, salt, pepper, a few sweet onions, and some small potatoes. Another viewer mentioned it reminds them of the goulash their mother made from an old government cookbook, which was an easy way to stretch a meal. It's not the traditional goulash, but for so many people, it's a perfect taste of home. Instead of expensive cuts of beef, it was made with ground beef and cheap pantry items like elbow macaroni, canned tomatoes, and onions. This version was hearty, easy to stretch with extra pasta, and could feed a whole family on a dime. It's a true one-pot wonder that saved both time and money. It's not fancy, but it's the ultimate comfort food for a chilly evening. Hoover stew. Speaking of stews, we can't forget Hoover stew, also known as Mulligan stew. The name comes from President Herbert Hoover, who many blamed for the Great Depression. This stew was often served in soup kitchens and had no set recipe. It was a hodgepodge of whatever ingredients were available. For the hobos, the migrant workers of that era, it was a communal dish, cooked in a large can over an open fire. Everyone would throw in whatever they could find, or scrounge up, from an onion to a can of peas. It symbolizes the power of community, of people coming together to help each other in America's most challenging economic period. You know, a lot of you have some really personal stories about this. One viewer shared how their grandfather, who was a hobo, would tell stories about finding ingredients and making these stews. Another viewer mentioned their mother made a similar stew with venison from the garden during the Depression. And many of you mentioned how your grandmothers, living near the train tracks, would leave out food for the hobos. It's a powerful reminder of the kindness and generosity that existed even during the hardest times. This dish wasn't about a perfect recipe. It was about survival. It was a dish of necessity that brought people together. It's not just a historical relic, it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Water pie. Next up, we have a dessert that truly defines making do, water pie. The name might not sound appetizing, but this was a dessert born of the Great Depression, when even simple ingredients like milk, eggs, or fat were hard to come by. It was a dish that showed how clever and resilient people could be. You know, this dish brings up a lot of wonderful memories for many of you. A few viewers mentioned their grandmothers made this for them, and one said their mom added cinnamon to it. A viewer from Puerto Rico shared that their mother made it with half water and half wild blackberry juice, and it was even better. It's so interesting to see how people got creative with what little they had. And as one viewer pointed out, these Depression years stuck with the people who lived through it. It's hard for us to really grasp what life at that time was like. This is a dessert made from just water, flour, sugar, vanilla, and a bit of butter. You pour the water directly into a pie crust, then sprinkle the sugar and flour mixture on top. The trick? You don't stir it. As it bakes, the magic happens. The flour and sugar mixture settles to the bottom, creating a thick, sweet custard-like filling, while the butter and vanilla rise to the top, forming a beautiful golden crust. It's a simple dessert that proves you can create something truly special and delicious from almost nothing. Red beans and rice. Let's go down to New Orleans for a beloved tradition, red beans and rice. This isn't just a meal, it's a piece of history and culture. Historically, this was a Monday meal. Wash day was Monday, and while laundry was being done, a pot of red beans would simmer slowly on the stove with a leftover ham bone from Sunday dinner. It was a genius, budget-friendly solution that made the most of leftovers. You know, this dish brings back so many memories for people. One Louisiana native said red beans and rice are a local staple they've eaten all their life. Another viewer shared a pro tip from a chef, mashing some of the beans against the side of the pot to thicken it up. Many people also mentioned it being a great comfort food that's very filling and nutritious. It's a testament to how humble ingredients can become a cherished part of a community's heritage. The key to this dish is the slow simmer. It lets the beans become creamy and absorb all the rich, smoky flavor from the ham hock. It's a filling, flavorful, and incredibly cheap meal that turned a humble pot of beans into a soulful tradition. Latkes. Finally, we end with a dish that tells a powerful story of immigration and resilience. Potato pancakes, also known as latkes. This iconic Jewish dish, traditionally eaten during Hanukkah, wasn't always made with potatoes. The potato was introduced to Europe in the 18th century, and when other crops failed, the humble potato became a dietary staple. Latkes were a way for immigrants to stretch a few potatoes into a satisfying, warm meal. You know, this dish holds so many cherished memories for people. Viewers have mentioned their mothers or grandmothers making them from scratch. One viewer, who grew up in Brooklyn, said that even though their family wasn't Jewish, they were raised around Jewish neighbors and were taught how to cook many of their dishes, including latkes. Another viewer, from a Polish family, shared that they ate potato pancakes on Christmas Eve. It's a wonderful example of how food traditions can cross cultures and create new memories. The magic of a latke is in its simplicity. It's just grated potatoes and onions, a little bit of flour and an egg, fried to a crispy golden brown. It's not just a dish, it's a symbol of hope and perseverance, a delicious reminder that even in the toughest times, you can always find a way to create something wonderful. So there you have it, folks. A journey through American food history, told through the simple, honest meals that got people through. These dishes aren't just food. They are stories of resilience, creativity, and the human spirit. They remind us that even in the toughest times, there is always a way to find comfort and hope. Welcome, friends. Today, we're stepping back in time to rediscover the humble meals that carried families through the Great Depression and into the mid-20th century. Some call them poor man's food, but behind every dish lies a story of survival, gratitude, and flavor.
A double-decker bologna sandwich!
Now, let's talk about the bologna sandwich, a true icon of its time. While it might seem simple today, for many, it's a nostalgic taste of childhood and a symbol of resilience during the Great Depression. One viewer recalled their family making fried bologna sandwiches during those tough times to make sure everyone was fed. The real charm of this sandwich was its versatility. While some preferred it cold, many remember frying the bologna, which made it cup up and become a delectable treat when topped with cheese. It was a canvas for creativity born out of necessity, with people adding everything from raw onions to potato chips.
Have you ever heard of a wish sandwich? A wish sandwich is the kind of a sandwich where you have 2 slices of bread and you wish you had some meat.
Next, we have the bread and butter sandwich. It may not sound special, but this dish holds many memories and a great deal of creativity, often enhanced with just a few ingredients. Many people remember this meal being elevated with a little sugar and cinnamon sprinkled on top. One viewer shared that their grandmother often made this for them, and it was a comfort food when they were sick at home. Others were even more creative, recalling that in the 70s they often ate a butter sandwich with a bit of brown or red sauce, like ketchup.
And here's the extra mayonnaise you ordered.
Yum, yum.
Enjoy.
This is the best stuff.
And then there's the mayonnaise and banana sandwich. Yes, you heard that right. While this combination might sound odd to many of us today, it was a real and beloved meal for a number of people during tough times. It was even common enough to be included on lists of classic old-time sandwiches. For those who grew up on it, the taste was nothing short of a delight. It's a perfect example of how people were resourceful and creative with what they had, turning a few simple ingredients into a satisfying lunch. For many, it was a simple pleasure that they still love today, showing that sometimes the most unusual combinations can create the fondest memories. Now, let's talk about a sandwich that might surprise you, the onion sandwich. While it may sound unusual, for some, this was a simple and delicious meal, a symbol of resourcefulness. Many viewers remember this dish being made with basic ingredients like mayonnaise and a bit of mustard. One person shared that a raw onion sandwich with dill pickle was their favorite summer or fall meal. Another commenter called a raw onion sandwich with mayonnaise, salt, and pepper on rye bread a treat.
Robbie and I can be eating peanut butter sandwiches. Want jelly on this sandwich?
I'm not hungry either.
And of course, we can't forget the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. This is perhaps the one item on our list that remains a beloved and popular staple today. One viewer recalled their grandparents telling them stories of peanut butter and jelly and bologna sandwiches. What's truly amazing is that this sandwich isn't just a memory. A 55-year-old viewer shared, "At 55 years old, I still bring 2 PBJ sandwiches for lunch every day. Some things are just never meant to change."
That's enough. Then say it. Say it. What? Say it. Hey, what? What's it called? Ketchup.
The ketchup sandwich is a dish that shows ingenuity and creativity in times of need. One viewer shared that in the late 70s, when they were growing up poor, a butter sandwich with a bit of brown or red sauce ketchup was one of their favorites. Another person recalled eating ketchup sandwiches as a kid, saying it's too bad that young people today have to eat them. However, for many, this meal was not bad at all. It was simply a great option for the circumstances. Another viewer had a humorous take, joking that a ketchup sandwich is a poor man's meal that would be quite expensive in today's economy.
Excuse me. You guys down here hear about the ongoing cholesterol problem in the country?
Next, let's explore a dish that truly defines resourcefulness, the lard sandwich. For many, this was a meal born out of necessity, a testament to making do with whatever was available. One viewer recalled that their mother, during World War II, said people would fight over the scrapings in the dripping bowl and spread that melted fat on bread for a tasty treat. This simple meal was surprisingly versatile. One commenter noted that a lard and salt sandwich is still eaten today in some countries, where it's often called fat bread and seasoned with paprika and raw onion.
And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Next on our list is a sandwich that brings a little freshness to the table, the cucumber sandwich. It was a simple but beloved option, often appearing on lists of common sandwiches from the era. While many of these meals were born out of a lack of options, the cucumber sandwich was still a welcome treat. As one person simply put it in the comments, cucumber sandwiches are so good.
Wheat, which is used to make bread, pork bellies, which is used to make bacon, which you might find in a bacon and lettuce and tomato sandwich.
Next up is the tomato sandwich, a simple meal that captures the essence of a summer garden. Often made with thick-sliced, fresh tomatoes on soft white bread, this sandwich was a true delight. One commenter described a beefsteak tomato sandwich with mayonnaise as heavenly and something from their childhood that they still relish. Many recall making these sandwiches with just a few ingredients such as mayonnaise, salt, and a bit of mustard. Another person remembered using onion and tomato from the garden, proving that even with limited means, a fresh, flavorful meal was always possible.
Should I fix you some sandwiches?
Next up is one of the more surprising combinations on our list, the peanut butter and pickle sandwich. While this pairing might raise a few eyebrows today, it was a very real part of the culinary landscape for a past generation. It's a testament to how people experimented with the simple ingredients they had on hand. What's amazing is that it's not just a relic of the past. One commenter shared that they still get a craving for these sandwiches a few times a year, sometimes with new variations.
I'll open with the tuna sandwich.
Tuna?
Oh, the dolphin thing.
The tuna salad sandwich was a common sight in lunchboxes and is a dish that many people still love and make today. However, for some, the tuna sandwich is tied to a powerful memory of generosity. One viewer shared a story of trading their own full school lunch for their friend's simple tuna fish sandwich. Looking back, they realized the friend's parents couldn't afford to buy school lunches, and this simple trade was a happy memory that still makes them smile.
Okay, Kowalski. What kind of sandwich do you want?
Let's talk about the fried Spam sandwich, a dish that truly defines the creativity of a generation that grew up during the Depression and World War II. It was a simple, affordable food that some jokingly refer to as a poor man's food. But this simple meal was surprisingly versatile and delicious. Viewers recalled adding everything from pineapple to avocado to it. One commenter described fried Spam with pineapple as, hey, kind of sweet and savory, while another loved a Spam sandwich loaded with veggies.
Sardine?
Now, let's explore a surprising combination, the egg and sardine sandwich. Both eggs and sardines were affordable staples during a period when families had to be resourceful. The sardine sandwich, often made with mustard, pickles, and onions, was an all-time favorite in some households and is still enjoyed by people today. Similarly, egg salad sandwiches were also a common sight in lunchboxes and at home.
It means, may I please be excused from the table? No, you may not.
Why not?
Because I have just made some peanut butter and bacon sandwiches.
Next, let's look at a combination that might sound strange to modern ears, the peanut butter and bacon sandwich. This dish appears on a list of classic sandwiches from the era. While it may seem like an unusual pairing, it combines two staples of the time: bacon, which was often a key ingredient in many simple meals, and peanut butter, a versatile and affordable food. Let's talk about the mayonnaise and onion sandwich, a surprisingly popular meal from the past that appears on a list of classic sandwiches from that era. This simple dish was more than just food. It was a way to make a satisfying meal from basic ingredients. One commenter shared their love for raw onion sandwiches with a little mayonnaise, salt, and pepper on rye bread, calling it a treat. Another person's parents met during the Depression and had onion slab sandwiches on a picnic. They even laughed about it because they both had the same breath.
Chicken piccata side salad.
Chicken piccata salad on the side, please.
Do you remember the classic chicken salad sandwich? It was a common staple in many households, often made alongside other popular salad sandwiches like ham and egg salad. For many people, this is more than just a memory. It's a continuing tradition. As one commenter shared, they still eat chicken salad sandwiches today, along with other dishes their parents taught them to make while growing up in the 70s and during the Depression. Let's talk about the mock chicken sandwich, a mysterious yet beloved meal from the past. This dish appears on a list of classic sandwiches from that era. One viewer shared that their mother often made them mock chicken sandwiches for school lunch. They had no idea what it contained, but they remembered that it was good and tasted like chicken. This sandwich is a perfect example of a generation's ingenuity. It's also tied to a powerful saying from a mother who made these sandwiches: if you have bread, you have food.
But the turkey sandwich and a cup of coffee, please.
Turkey sandwich and a cup of coffee?
Yes.
Yes.
Who can forget the classic ham and cheese sandwich? It was a common staple in many households, often made alongside other familiar salad sandwiches like ham salad and egg salad. For many people, this is more than just a memory. It's a continuing tradition. One commenter shared that they still eat ham and cheese sandwiches today, along with other dishes their parents taught them to make while growing up in the 70s and during the Depression. This next sandwich on our list might make you raise an eyebrow: the chicken liver sandwich. While it may not sound like a crowd pleaser today, it was once a very real part of the culinary landscape. Chicken livers were sautéed with onions, sometimes blended into a smooth pâté, then spread generously on bread. For extra comfort, people often added butter or a pickle on the side. The experience of eating liver as a child was surprisingly common. One viewer even shared that they thought they would never like their grandparents' liver sausage sandwiches, but eventually grew to enjoy them.
Oh, yeah. Peanut butter cup Dorito sausage car panini. And let's crack a Cadbury egg over the whole thing. Just gonna use my spare glove compartment underwear as a napkin.
Let's talk about the olive loaf sandwich, a classic that was a common sight in lunchboxes and is a dish that many people still love and make today. It was often made alongside other familiar salad sandwiches like ham and egg salad. While it might not sound appealing to everyone, one commenter simply stated that olive loaf sandwiches are not bad. Yes, pasta inside bread, it's a real thing. The ravioli sandwich popped up as a fun, filling twist when families wanted something hearty without much fuss. Think of it as Italian comfort food gone portable. Cooked ravioli, sometimes fried, sometimes just saucy, was piled between slices of bread or tucked into a roll. Add a little marinara, maybe a sprinkle of cheese, and suddenly you had a carb lover's dream. Pasta plus sandwich in every bite.
You remember cream corn?
So, where's cream corn these days?
The creamed corn sandwich. The name alone takes us back to a time when simple ingredients were transformed out of necessity. This unique combination appears on a list of classic sandwiches from that era. As one commenter put it, these dishes are a testament to how people could stretch $1 and create such hearty, often surprisingly delicious meals out of necessity. We've reached the end of our journey back in time to a place of simple meals and cherished memories. As we've seen, these dishes may not be considered gourmet, but they hold a priceless value, the love and ingenuity of a resourceful generation. The comments you've shared prove that these memories are far from forgotten. They live on in our hearts, reminding us of the resilience and gratitude of those who came before us. We hope this video has brought back fond memories of your own childhood meals and the loved ones who nourished you. Thank you for joining us on this journey.